Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CEDH. I'm one of your hosts, Lyndon, aka Noobzords, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Matt, aka Null.
Yeah.
Reed, aka Sick Robot.
How you doing?
And Morgan, aka Spleenface.
What's up, everyone?
And in this episode, on this very, very special day, which is, I guess, not necessarily whenever it gets released. We're recording this on February 22nd, 2022. And we'll probably be done recording this around 10:22 p.m. or in 24-hour time, 2222. We will be discussing...
I didn't even know that. This whole time we were setting it up for that?
we're aiming for that's what we're aiming for time wise. We will be covering we're gonna be covering 2v2. Oh yeah, I also forgot that it's a Tuesday today. Yeah.
It's the Into the North Tuesday 2v2 special episode. But you know that because it's in the title already.
Yeah, I was about to say, you guys realize like it's in the title. This is all spoiled ahead of time.
That's true.
Check
the joke is
date.
lost on the people who's like they're listening to this on
they have
February
a playlist
27th. Yeah.
I can guarantee you no one's gonna be listening to this today.
Yeah.
And I might refuse to put this on a playlist on YouTube.
But yeah, I mean, it took us only 3 hours in pre-show to figure out
how deep
the most overloaded
which theme
references.
to go with for this episode. Yeah. So longtime listeners may remember when the pre-show was entirely dedicated to
fan favorite pre-show topic.
Discussing nothing but 2v2, a format that is entirely local to Southern Ontario.
Toronto CDH meta.
So you might be thinking we're scraping the bottom of the barrel, but our runner-up episode was episode 22 part 2. That was our runner-up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those, we'll be giving. So I guess the format has gotten more exposure than just outside of our circle of kind of friends who play it, because there was a video with the spike feeders, and someone from Second Seven on, I think, the channel called Possibility Storm. Morgan, is that right?
Yeah. The Possibility Storm did a video with Fitz from AOTA, Jim from the Spike Feeders, and Josh from Second Seven, playing 2v2, and around a month or so ago, the Mystic Remoras did a live stream where they played 2v2 as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and I think, we were discussing, we're pretty sure that because we played on stream with the Mystic Remoras with like Two-Headed Giant, and then we
did try as hard as we could to convince them to not do Two-Headed Giant.
And yeah, we basically after that we're like, there's a version of
that's like way
two-player,
more interesting to play.
that doesn't suffer the same problems as Two-Headed Giant, and I think we introduced them to the format there, and then I guess from there it's spreading, which is great, because this, I'll say, I love 2v2. It is a really interesting format. But yeah, before we'll get into the differences between 2v2, so people know what we're talking about. Before that, what have you guys been up to since the last episode? And we're not allowed to say 2v2 because we're going to talk about.
So it's the reverse. We talk about
exactly.
EDH.
in this
bizarro world.
Bizarro world. It's the 2v2 main topic and the CDH pre-show.
I've been getting back on that vintage cube grind.
Oh yeah, getting those streams in for Zach. Gotta give him his content.
Exactly.
Dude, I've not felt a strong urge to go jam vintage cube. I probably will. I mean, I do every season, but as has been the theme for the past couple episodes, it's all mostly been Master Duel. Yu-Gi-Oh! Still jamming that, having fun with that. So Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, actually, I actually do have an update on something that I haven't had an update for a while. I relapsed and started playing TFT again because a friend wanted to try it out, and yeah, so I just got back into it and made it back to Masters. Pretty happy about that. I think I could probably go a bit higher than Masters, but it would require like an exponentially larger time sink, so I'm not really feeling it. But yeah, feels good to get back in the saddle, and also feels a bit weird to be back addicted to video games.
Yeah. Oh, I guess non-card gaming. One thing I found is like, man, it's like if I'm not playing Magic, it's like, okay, I'll play Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like I just haven't been playing other video games or like other games really. It's like it's always card games. It's just that's kind of like my always been my focus and my go-to.
I mean, I'm sure everybody on this podcast can sort of relate, but it like there always has to be a card game in my rotation of games that I'm playing, right? Like I just like I can't exist without being able to play a card game. So if it's not Magic, it's gotta be something else.
Yeah. It's not Magic, it's euchre.
Oh yeah.
I've never
oh my
been
god.
Euchre, I don't want to start drama right now.
Too late.
Kind of a Hearts player myself.
Yeah. I did play some Baba's You with a friend the other night, and I jammed. So someone had done some streams on a friend of the friend Scott had done some Baba's You streams on the Frog server before, and so I was familiar with it. But you know, my friend wanted to start like a new game, so we've been doing that, and it's that game is dope. Really cool puzzle.
Dude, what is this game? How do you spell this? Baba's You?
Baba is you. BABA.
Oh, is
Baba
you.
Is
I thought you said you.
Is you.
I'm like, this has to do with trees?
Dude, it's the the RuneScape, dude. You log.
Baba's You. My favorite side quest.
No, dude, yeah, it's a. I feel like as it's. People will say, oh, it's like programmer kind of logic puzzle game. I mean, I think I'll as much as you guys are much more computer science X sort of thing. So maybe it will appeal to you, maybe not. I don't know, but it's really fun.
I do want to say, I feel like that's an underexplored dynamic of this podcast. I feel like there's like, I feel like in a lot of ways there's like a 3v1 dynamic for each of us. And Lyndon's is the engineer being stuck in a room full of computer scientists.
I thought it was that it was crazy.
We're all crazy, dude.
Dude, you guys have been dead for 10 years, man. I'm recording a podcast solo, doing all the different voices.
Oh no!
It's full.
I don't know. I think Lyndon does have that over semantic, like, has that ability to just be like hyper semantic. So which comes from programming.
Yeah, I'll say all my generally most of my friends, like in high school, most of my friends were in computers. I feel like there was a parallel world where I was also went into computer science. But yeah, it's just I guess I get along with a bunch of sweaty nerds who like to code. So
nice
is what it is. Yeah, cool. That was a weird tangent for our pre-show. But
yeah, you gotta get weird with it. When you can't do 2v2 as your pre-show, you gotta really dig deep.
Well, I think after we introduced the title and the topic for the main show, the people who are still listening are the ones who will stick through anything. So. Oh
yeah. We have a captive audience.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's jump into housekeeping. Housekeeping, we normally cover our new patrons, but this week we have no new patrons, so no housekeeping. That's it. Short segment. But, as we normally do anyway, I'd still like to give a shout out to all of our existing patrons. Just, you guys help support the show, and as we talk about in the end of every episode, it's integral, and we appreciate you guys a lot.
You guys are our bedrock.
So on to new developments. Yeah, we talked about this. We talked about this like 2 weeks ago, or sorry, 2 episodes ago.
I think it's been like 3 episodes at this point. Anyway,
Yeah, Marchesa. So there's a tournament in Seattle at Mox Boarding House, put on by previous guest of the show, Joking. And
all around just TO All-Star
yeah.
for CDH.
Absolutely.
I do love. I think we should do that going forward, though. If anybody's ever been on as a guest of the show,
That's the only
always their
accolade we give
primary
them,
introduction. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we are Reed, Morgan, and myself will be going to this event. So if anyone is going or is in the area,
or you're in the area, yeah,
make
your
it. But I know some people who didn't make it for the main event who are still going, and just to hang out and do some of the other side events and stuff. So
awesome, yeah, because I think they have both. So they have CDH, but they also have a Legacy and
Conquest.
Conquest,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. Is this gonna be the first real life Conquest event, or was there one at like Vegas or something?
I think Morgan and I went to the last. No, there was. I guess there was a Vegas in between, but that was like a not official.
I think this is the first real life.
Yeah,
cool.
There was no Conquest.
Nice.
event,
Like
right?
big Conquest tournament.
That's sweet.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, sweet format. I think it's awesome that it's getting a bit more eyes.
Mm-hmm. Also, really cool that that the CDH main event is like 100 people, I think, and like the fact that there's a wait list for that is honestly kind of dope. Like the format is doing well, thriving and popular, and people want to play it in paper and tournaments. Like that is awesome, dude. I remember when we'd go to meet up at GP Montreal or the Magic Fest, and like there was the 5 people playing CDH, and it was we were 4 of them.
Oh no, you don't even friggin' MF Niagara, the classic. Myself, Morgan, Braden, and Pongo, the only 4 CDH players there.
We've come so far.
Well, but also Braden only arrived on he arrived the day after we did, so we spent we spent 3 hours we played 15 pods of 3-way
3DH.
It was just Shuffle Hulk, Sacred Hulk, and I was playing Niv Mizzet Food Chain. It was rough.
Oh, Niv Mizzet Food Chain. Throwback.
Yeah, so let us know if you're going to be at Marchesa, and we can kind of, make time, say hi, or, if you see us there, just say hi. We'd love to hear from you guys. Into the main topic of the show, and as I said earlier, it is 2v2. So, what is? I guess we should probably start off with what is 2v2, so people can get on the page of the same rules and what that, and then we can kind of discuss a bit of the history and kind of how that came about. So, who wants to cover what makes 2v2 2v2? Someone?
I believe in you, Morgan.
Sure.
That's all right.
All
I'm
right.
confused.
It's me.
You've been voluntold.
I've been voluntold. All right. So 2v2 is a team-based way of playing EDH. So the standard deck construction rules still apply. 100-card singleton. You have a commander. You're not allowed to have the same commander as your partner. And scheming symmetry is banned.
Hold on, Morgan.
What?
Yeah.
So you said it's a team-based way to play Commander, but doesn't that format already exist? And isn't it called Two-Headed Giant?
Yeah. So the thing about Two-Headed Giant is that it's terrible. There are a lot of issues based around first of all, having the shared life total makes things like ad nauseum and some other cards like that just
Necropotence.
yeah,
with Zero,
Necropotence just kind of a little bit dumb. And both of you untapping at the same time also creates it turns turn order into kind of an issue where it's almost impossible to stop someone from going off with someone spending their entire turn protecting them, unless you basically skipped your previous turn to hold up as much interaction as possible. And so the idea with with 2v2 is that you sit opposite your partner, you don't take shared turns, and you don't have a shared life total. So each player has 30 life, and then you alternate, like you sit opposite your partner.
AB,
so
AB.
yeah, AB. And the person going first doesn't draw, which is less of a disadvantage than it is in Two-Headed Giant, where two people don't draw, but still a little bit more fair than it is in CDH, where the person going first still does.
Yeah, and it also like it introduces some nice strategic or like strategy to actually like picking turn order, because there's like a reasonable amount of time where you might both be playing control decks, so like you're like, oh, okay, we'll go second and fourth rather than first and third, so we get the extra card.
Yeah, that's occasionally an option. So yeah, it I would say it Two-Headed Giant influences some cards in a really negative way. Another one is like Aetherflux Reservoir, where you can just activate it instantly because the starting life total in Two-Headed Giant Commander is 60. So the idea is that you have a slightly, basically you still play 2 versus 2, but you avoid some of the really strange quirks of how Two-Headed Giant works.
But you mentioned turn spells in Two-Headed Giant, right?
I didn't, but yeah, that's another really good one where like
That's also an issue.
Turn
spells are
spells
so
turns out to
busted
be
in 2v2
the
or
only
Two-Headed
thing to
Giant.
do in Two-Headed Giant, because when your turn spell, so Time Walk is banned, but so the current going rate for an extra turn is 5 mana for an extra turn for one player. Well, in Two-Headed Giant, when you're getting 2 extra turns for the price of 1, you are paying 2.5 mana for a turn spell. Per turn, which sounds like Time Walk to me. So turn spells are just absurd, and yeah. So,
and that's not even to mention like in Two-Headed Giant EDH, you can play like double Edric, and then both people get double Edric triggers, and then both people are playing turns, and it just it's disgusting.
Yeah. So the thing what I think really makes 2v2 shine, so I guess to summarize is life totals. Did we discuss what the actual life totals are? You say 30?
I did say 30.
Okay,
but it was
so,
sort of mixed in the middle, so it might have gotten lost.
One thing is because, and so there's a couple of really interesting aspects that I think we should talk about, some of these rules a bit. So and how they address the issue. So 30 life, we talked about the problems of having all your life group together shared with your partner. But there is even further advantages. You're not just solving those problems, but when you split the life totals, it adds an interesting dynamic where you can focus on one player, and if you kill one player, it's now a 2v1, right? So there's a lot of incentive to take out one player, and you're like, well, 30 life, how viable can aggro be? Well,
when you have two people,
it's more like 15 life. If they're both focusing down one player, right?
And you can't have like super imbalanced decks. Like you can't have super imbalanced decks where one of them is primarily the aggro and one of those primarily the control. Like that does work, but you would leave the control deck potentially up to getting just knocked out early.
Mm-hmm. And so that's part of the life total. And one of the things that I really like about 2v2, that I think Two-Headed Giant, you're able to explore commander synergies, but because of the way that you just want to play turn spells, and kind of the decks almost build themselves, and you can't lean into your commander synergies as much because it's just worse than doing the kind of generically good thing. Whereas in 2v2, you're very incentivized to lean into the commander synergies, which is and the commander synergies by having a partner and your commanders. People talk about the kind of thought experiment of what if every commander had partner, right? Well, what kind of awesome synergies could you get there? That's kind of what the 2v2 is asking you to figure out. It's if you could have one player playing one, commander or pairs of commanders, you're playing something else. What interesting synergies can you build upon from there? So some good example. I mean, maybe so we've got some of our favorite examples that we'll go into later, but I'll give it an example of something that just so that people can kind of have something to work with, something tangible. So I worked on a deck with a friend where we built Doran, the Siege Tower, as kind of like an aggro Staxy deck, and the partner was playing Silas Sidar, and so Sidar has some. Let me just pull up Sidar so I can actually read his text. So Doran, if you guys will remember, we'll make it so that creatures are dealing damage with their toughness. And then Sidar Kondo of Jamura with partner says creatures your opponents control without flying or reach can't block creatures with power 2 or less, and he's a 2/5. So with Doran and Sidar, you both have 5/5s in the command zone that are now basically unblockable. And so you're just a beatdown deck, playing stacks, and I guess with Silas you also have some efficient blue interaction. So that's the sort of like cool synergy that you just wouldn't see anywhere else. Cool.
Yeah.
So that's the rules of 2v2, and let's talk about kind of how we came to play the format and kind of our personal history with it. And I'll volunteer Matt to talk about this.
Yeah, sure. So in our kind of early days of graduating and moving back to Toronto, we were trying to find a play group. And we ultimately ended up meeting up with a person known online as Tom TG. And we played CEDH with him.
Friend of the show.
And one day he's like, hey, I go to this LGS on, just outside Toronto, and we play this format called 2v2. Do you guys want to get in my car? Yeah, and that's the brief history. That's the inception of it. And I think before kind of we showed up, it escapes me. What was the store called again? X-Planet?
X-Planet.
Yeah. They'd been playing it for multiple years, as far as I understand, and refined the rules to the point where it is today.
Mm-hmm. And it was really sad that so it's a bit of it's kind of a bit of a trek for all of us.
Yeah.
So it was fun to kind of make an event out of it. They ran it. Was it
once a month, I think.
Once a month,
yeah.
Which
is actually, it's a really great time frame too, because it means that you don't really get tired of the format, and it gives everybody time to come up with a new idea,
completely
and then
new deck,
bring it in
a
completely new set of
team,
stuff, and then and then bring new decks and match them up against each other. So it kept it really fresh.
There's just so much design space too to explore. It's really refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a trek, but yeah, it's really sad that since the pandemic started, we did a mini 2v2. I mean, it's hard to even call it a tournament, but I guess we did a mini 2v2 kind of exhibition.
It was branded as a tournament, so we'll call it a tournament.
Sure, tournament. But yeah, since then, I haven't played any 2v2 at all, and it's just that's a consequence of the pandemic, fortunately. So yeah, hopefully. Things start clearing up, and maybe we can jam some IRL 2v2 again. That'd be nice.
That'd be fun.
But yeah, so in terms of actually, there are some things we didn't mention in specific rules to 2v2. So there are the ban list is basically the same as Commander with one exception. Scheming Symmetry is additionally banned because it has to be. That card is absurd.
So not okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, explain it to me. I don't understand why.
So Scheming Symmetry, you're like, oh well, it probably says opponent or something, right? Yeah. Choose 2 target players. Each of them searches their library for a card, shuffles it in the library, and puts out a card on top for a single black mana sorcery. Yeah.
And no life loss.
Yeah. So double Imperial Seal. Yeah, pretty busted. So also there is a Planeswalkers as commanders was tried out as a rule for a while.
Yeah.
The one thing is Teferi was kind of unanimously decided that card was too strong.
Three fairy, to be clear.
Yeah, three fairy.
Time yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that card is absurd. I think
it's
the
very
only
not okay in
losses
the command
that
zone.
Teferi took were to other Teferi decks.
Yeah, and if you don't believe us, just you have to trust us, because this whole episode could be on how miserable that is as a commander in a team.
Because that was legal for 3 events.
Yeah,
right?
I think we didn't really pick up on it the first time around, and then we were like, wait a minute.
Yeah, so Planeswalkers, Commanders. Also, one thing I actually like about this is that there's sideboards. Now, this isn't like the matches are best of 3, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But there's no sideboarding between games. So the sideboard is really just a wish board. So, unlike Commander, where, cards like Burning Wish or whatever don't really work, or the learn mechanic, or lots of things reference cards outside the game, but you need to have like a sideboard for that. So there is a wish board, and there is one thing that has kind of was cropping up the last time we were playing it, which is that Karn, the Great Creator, is kind of unhealthy, or
Just sort of not okay.
It's like sort of not, like, I know you kind of say that like sarcastically, but I genuinely think it was only sort of not okay. Like it kind of made sense.
The biggest problem of it was that every deck had a good stacks piece that was strong against other people's artifact ramp, and which everyone of course was doing. And then it also just was a 1-card win condition by getting Mycosynth Lens.
Yeah, I wouldn't even necessarily say like artifact ramp was as prevalent as it is in CDH, because there definitely is a card advantage, card quality loss with artifact ramp, and so I don't think it was as big of a problem as a stacks piece.
Yeah, I mean, its biggest problem was that it was a decent stacks piece, decent card that you could get utility, you could get a Tormod script, you could get whatever. But the big problem is that it is just a 1-card win condition in decks or colors where the win conditions might have struggled. So Karn was allowed during the 3 fairy winter. So it was like, what's the best win condition you can do in Azorius when 3 fairies your commander? Karn, Mycosynth Lattice.
So there was also another issue with Karn too, which was sort of that like it was not just that Mycosynth Lattice was a thing that you like were always doing in pretty much every deck because you could just fit a Karn into every deck. The issue is that also, in order to like make the most out of Karn, you sort of wanted like a pretty extensive wish board of just like stuff to cover a lot of edge cases. Like you want like a Tormod script in there, you probably want like a Pithing Needle in there, whatever. The issue is that you also sort of wanted an LED in there just to be able to turbo out a Lattice, or like some relatively expensive artifacts. And the format that we were playing was basically non-proxy, so it was sort of just paid to win, or like paid to win on edge cases a lot of the time, where like if you couldn't afford an LED, it sucks to be you're just not allowed to have one in your wish board, even though like
I think that
it's not like necessary for your strategy, but it is like very good in specific cases.
They allowed 5 proxies, which meant that like you could get some stuff, but it was definitely like a little bit tricky where like
do I want a duel, or do I want to
there was
have
definitely
like edge case stuff in my sideboard?
And duels are definitely way more important in this format than CDH.
And then so
it was less of a sorry.
Also notable.
Yeah, I did want to sort of like clarify that like this wasn't a huge issue, but it was always just sort of like a feel bad where it's like, well, I just like don't have the stuff for this sideboard, and it's not like I can't make a 99 around it. It's just that like in every deck that I could ever play in this format, I'm just missing stuff out of the deck because I can't make a full wish board.
Those are just annoying, especially the 5 proxies cover your 100-card deck, and you've got another 10 cards. It's like, Ensnaring Bridge, you're gonna have an Ensnaring Bridge in there, like $50 or whatever the heck it was at the time, or what it is now. It's like just a bunch of money for very specific cards that don't, as a CDH player or as a primarily CDH player you might not have in your collection because you don't play Ensnaring Bridge in CDH. And then I guess the last
fake Magic player.
last rule and I guess maybe we'll recap the rules after this, is no secret discussions. So all information, or like no code words, and so there's a bit of like honesty sort of in this kind of system where you're not supposed to have a secret code word or talking pig Latin when trying to communicate information to your opponent, or talking differently. All information that you're trying to convey to your partner should be understandable by everyone at the table, which I think is a totally fine rule.
Yeah, I mean it adds like a nice amount of sort of like depth in terms of like in two-headed giant. A lot of the time it can feel like you're not really playing with two people because you like both take turns at the same time and you can just like just show each other your hands. So it's like it's not like two people piloting two decks. It's like one person piloting two decks twice, if that makes any sense. So, or like, yeah, like it like there's just a lot of, and like there's appeal for that for like team events and like regular constructing Magic and whatever, but it doesn't really feel like 2v2 a lot of the time. This rule is sort of to make it like actually feel like 2v2, where you sort of have to like have this like read on what your partner has so that they don't have to like say it out loud and give up the ghost to the rest of the table, but you also sort of have to like think about if you might be wrong about that.
I mean, especially
It's
if
also
your
just fun
decks
to
are
ask,
like,
should I go off to your partner?
yeah,
Like,
that's what I was
such a
gonna
weird
say.
question. Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna put together a team combo, like you need to kind of have a feel of how ready your opponent is or your teammate is, and like we'll go over some like synergies and like team combos later. But
Yeah, so I guess because we've kind of thrown in and given some anecdotes and some stories, let's just give a recap of the rules, as concise as possible. So, the players sit in AB configuration. Everyone starts with 30 life. The player going first does not draw a card. Each player has a commander or partners, but you cannot share any commanders, or like it's not just unique combinations, right? So I can't do Thras Timna, then my opponent doing, or my partner doing Timna Malcolm. There can't be any overlap between your commanders. It's the regular commander ban list, but scheming symmetry is also banned. Planeswalkers can be commanders except for 3 fairy. I mean, that was more of an experimental rule, so that's not kind of fundamental to the format. There is a 10 card wish board, and no secret discussion.
yeah, just one last minor thing. There was some discussion about whether milling one player would end the game for both players or not, and I think that rule got switched a couple times. I know that happened definitely before we arrived, but anyway,
yeah,
just to kind of provide diversity, I guess, in archetypes.
Oh, actually, one thing. The way how I win the game effects happen. Like so, Thassa's like so one player can lose the game in your partner combination, right? And the other player is still around. But if one player is winning the game, then your team. If something says in the game.
Yeah, I think initially they actually had it so that you had to like effects that made a player lose the game actually made the team lose, but then I think they wound up scrapping that.
I can't see any like relevant, I don't know, interactions.
Well, it was like, should you be able to like suicide pact to protect your partner? Or
yeah.
Was like the sort of the basis of the discussion.
But it's a lot less of an ethical issue in 2v2 again, because like you still have a person alive on your team, so it like makes sense to sort of like
to
you
throw
can
yourself
sacrifice yourself in a dire in a dire
really
situation to like still have a chance of winning the match.
Can't really spite either.
Yeah, because it's at its core, it's like closer to a 1v1 format in terms of like just how like politics play out. So
speaking of that's actually a good segue into our kind of discussion, which is what differences are there from CDH? You know, I mean, we're a CDH podcast, so you know people are familiar with CDH. What are the differences from CDH in terms of like deck construction and how things play out? Reed,
So sort of
you're being
spinning off of
voluntold on
that.
this one.
Yeah, I know. So sort of spinning off of that being closer to like 1v1 in a lot of ways than it is to like true free for all, like regular CDH. There's like the interaction starts to take a very different shape. That looks a lot more like what Legacy does versus what CDH does. CDH is very centralized around trying to not go 1v1 with an opponent as much as possible, because then, I mean, I can't imagine how many times we've had this discussion on this episode or this podcast, or how much this has been just talked about in general to CDH, but trading 1v1 in CDH isn't card advantage because you still have two other opponents. Whereas in the 2v2 format, it sort of is. You're getting a fair deal because you're both in the same team. So you trade 1v1 with one of your opponents. Well, you still have your teammate who can trade 1v1 with the other opponent, and then you're at parity. So it makes stuff like Thoughtseize and Duress and Inquisition of Kozilek a lot better. And it also makes spot removal a lot better, especially when people are trying to beat you to death, like some aggro decks do. So basically what it ends up looking like is a lot of the interaction looks a lot more like 1v1 interaction. So you'll see a lot more hand attack, a lot more targeted removal, a lot of mana denial. So Wasteland and Strip Mine are actually playable in this format.
I love that.
As opposed to CH where like they're fringe playable.
I honestly love like Wasteland and Thoughtseize. Like it's surprising that I'm even saying this, but like that's actually refreshing.
So my kind of way I would always say this format is like this is the format. I mean, the problem with the format is it's just not popular, right? Like people, it's like something we play. But like if I was trying to get a Legacy player who's like, you know, maybe I played EDH once, but you know, not into it, you know, and people will be like, oh, you should try CDH, and it's like CDH is more, I'd imagine, is more appealing for Legacy players, but there is still something that's, you know,
like you're
the
missing
free for all
a lot
aspect
of,
is kind of a big gap for some players to make to bridge. So I've always said that I think if I could introduce a Legacy player to kind of like dip their toes into Commander, it would be 2v2, because you get to explore what it's like to have a commander and the synergies between yours and your partners, but the card sets and the play styles are a lot more familiar. You know, you like something like Unmask or Grief that pitches a black card to, you know, Thoughtseize your opponent is like, that is a play, that those are playable. Like you could play those cards. Hymn to Turok, you know, we mentioned a bunch of others.
It's too bad 2v2 pods are even harder to launch than CDH pods.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else in differences that anyone else wants to touch on, or I guess I'll say that you know, we talked about, you know, the viability of like Thoughtseize and hand attack, and exchanging one for one, and how you're. But one thing that is kind of important, we talked about this with damage as well, is that when you're both focusing on one player, things become, you're like kicking someone when they're down in 2v2 is really effective. Like, you know, you could strip mine, you know, the opponent, you know, directly across from you, then your other partner could do the same with the other opponent, or you could both strip mine the same player and put them back to the Stone Age, and then you're playing a true 2v1 because they have no mana to cast their spells, or, you know, you've ripped all the cards of their hand or something.
The true classic, I was about to say the true classic in 2v2 is both people aim him to Turek at the same person. It's just like
So I'm out of the game. Well,
Matt, I see you just added a note here when you touched on it.
I think one notable difference is there's a lot of really strong team synergy in lower color pairs, and like not necessarily just partner pairs. So you actually see a lot of viable, like a lot more viable commanders, I think, generally speaking, or like at least kind of those like fringe playable CH commanders that you would love to see get an edge, and then it's like, oh, 2v2 actually makes them work really well.
Yeah, especially just because like a lot of commanders get a lot better when you're okay with trading one for one, just in general too. And there are a lot more, like, it opens up more synergies when you add those commanders in that, like, maybe like are really good as part of a synergistic pair, but aren't good on their own in CDH.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
some things, some commanders, like, you know, I mean, there's, I think, Josh Mormonator has made I think he runs a Kroxa deck in CDH or maintains that list.
Oh yeah, and
But,
Kroxa
like,
gets so much
Kroxa
better
in 2v2.
Yeah.
The ETB discards for each opponent, right? So it's
Yeah.
a 2-mana, 2-for-1 in the command zone just right off the bat.
Like
You know?
it's effectively a mind rot.
Yeah, and then
in the command zone, and then you can like unearth it,
and then you can
do, like,
unearth it,
disgusting
abuse it
stuff.
there.
Yeah.
But even just being a 6/6, like, damage is very relevant. And you know, the ability that triggers on attack, and then the fact that it's resilient, because you're never gonna, they can't kind of gatekeep you out of casting it by like repeatedly countering it or something, and lock it behind a commander tax in command zone, because you just keep unearthing it out of your graveyard for 4. So it is, you know, low color strong in that kind of respect. There's lots of other commanders like that, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and like actually resilient commanders. Like I
Yeah.
see, like Thrasios is quote unquote resilient in CDH because it costs 2 mana, right? You can just cast again. But like actual commanders with evasion and protection and escape, you know, Uro is like such a menace. Like actually playable and have real upsides.
And I mean, also, like, there's so many cascading effects with all this stuff too. I sort of wanted to touch on this before we get off this topic, which is like, in addition, like, or sort of as a semi-direct consequence of hand attack becoming more viable, just in terms of the card parity in like versus CDH, it actually means that like combos become a lot more fragile, because in CDH a lot of the time, unless you're like just getting spited or whatever by some Gitrog player on turn 1, you're not really having your hand attacked ever. Like,
Gitrog does
typically cards feel
Boomer.
yeah cards feel pretty safe in your hand. And I mean, like, even during Flash Hulk era, like, how were people getting cards into people's hands? With wheels, not with hand attack, because like you can actually use wheels for other stuff. So as soon as you introduce hand attack into a format like CDH, for the combos, like, you might think with this, like, oh, why are you going to the effort of like trying to kill somebody with combat damage? Like, even if it is easy, why don't you just like Oracle Consult them with somebody else providing the backup for you? Well, because you could just sort of Thoughtseize a Thoracle out of somebody's hand, and then suddenly we're in a damage race.
Yeah. Way back in the day when, like, you know, Teferi was even on the roadmap or on the the map. It's like you play it differently. Like in CDH, you would happily have a Chain Veil in your hand, you know, sit there laughing to yourself as you collect 6 counter spells. But in 2v2, it's like absolutely you 100% want to cheat it into play with like a whir.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that like makes a lot of the combo decks worse is the mana attack. We sort of mentioned it a little bit, but
Yeah.
like a lot of the, you know, if you look at like standard 4-color soup CDH decks, first of all, the rainbow lands start to get like a lot worse. Forbidden Orchard, like when combat damage is on the table, things like City of Brass and Mana Confluence are a bit worse. Forbidden Orchard is a lot worse. Tarnished Citadel's like real bad.
Just take out 10% of your starting life.
Also, like, you can have a fetch stifled and or get like wastelanded, and
Yeah.
so they're wastelanded or strip mined or whatever. So like,
Or Strip Mind, yeah.
So
That's
so
the
there's
big
like,
one.
if you play like the super greedy mana base, and it's like, oh yeah, pretty much every hand will have like perfect mana. It's like, sure, every hand will have perfect mana until like one thing goes wrong, and then it's like, oh, they stifled like the fetch that was gonna find me my only black source. Like, well, okay, maybe I want my deck to be a little bit more resilient to that. So it tends to like give another avenue to punish people who are playing these like 4-color soupy combo decks that would sort of be the most direct translation of like quote unquote top tier CDH decks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a couple segments left. So I think the next one we're gonna cover, I think, is some of our favorite synergies and decks that you know we kind of brewed or came across. in our time playing 2v2. Then we'll touch on some new things that have kind of evolved and been printed since we were really looking at this format a lot more seriously since the pandemic. And then finally, we're going to talk about what kind of were the best decks the format were, and kind of what we think the best decks in the format are. Right. So, what are our favorite synergies or decks that we came across? I mentioned this earlier. One of my favorite was the Silas Sidar plus Doran. I just thought that synergy was really cute, but also when you're just dumping out a bunch of stacks effects, which tends to actually be a decent strategy. Having 3 mana 5/5, and then that also just turns a lot of your stacks effects into really efficient beaters is pretty sweet. I enjoyed that deck.
Yeah, and the evasion is actually really important because most teams are playing pretty efficient blockers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was. I only had the chance to play that deck once, but when we go back to if we get some games, I'm gonna look back at those lists and update them with some of the new stuff, because there's been new stuff.
There's been a bunch of new stuff.
Yeah.
This is sort of out of order, but I did want to say as well, for this kind of stuff, I didn't actually ever see this specific pairing get played, even though there are 2 things on this list. But I always thought that it would be awesome to play a combination of like Renin 6 plus Croxa, and just play like
one is like the hand attack,
him to Turak, like strip mine sinkhole control, and like with 2 commanders that are like hyper cheap, and then you could both like play like pyroclasms to deal with the aggressive decks and just not care about them.
I would prefer
your team would run out of cards so quickly that like you'd think that their opponents did like a wheel combo on you or something.
Yeah, so I mean, Reed mentioned Renin 6 was shout out again to Tom when we were experimenting, or when there was experimenting with the commanders, Planeswalkers commanders. He had a really sick Renin 6 deck that was basically like turbo strip mine wasteland, and it was just Renin 6 felt really impressive when it just pings off all of your dorks, and then and then also just strip mines you every turn. Oh, it is nasty. It is nasty. Yeah, but that was a.
But it's fair and it's interactive, and it makes sense.
It's like super fair.
It makes sense card advantage wise to have a deck like that. So
Yeah. And then
touch on this next one.
Here's I think this one. I think you put this one, right?
It's like the classic.
I put 2. I put both these here.
Okay.
I mean, they're kind of 2 points, but I guess sub point. But yeah, partner with. So, if one of your teammates is using a partner with combo, they can target their other teammate with the partner with trigger to get them to search their library for the corresponding partner. In particular, Morgan and I ran a Kenrith's, Will and Rowan Kenrith's partner combination, which has an additional synergy where with Will, you can discount a player until your next turn, and because your opponent, because your teammate, takes their turn after yours, rather than doing it at the same time, like they'll get the full benefits if you target them, and plus if they start taking turn spells into account, it's like an actual.
They still get the discount, like persists across
all of their turns. Yeah,
yeah. So
can't do that in 2HG.
Yeah, that was like playing Kess with turn spells costing 3 mana is pretty
so
not okay.
And then other partner lists that we saw, like the Boros pair with the dragon, I think was really strong, just because
they took it.
Korvath and Sylvia. One of them played.
That's a crazy thing. They won the event that month, right?
They've ran it a couple times. You know what? It's funny because I think that was like their first win. Finally, like they've been playing together and they finally got their win. So it's a cool tactic.
But yeah, I was surprising to be beat down by just dragons.
And then the other one was playing. I think it was Krom Ishai. It was definitely Jeskai, and it was definitely Krom. Maybe it was Krom Akiri. I don't remember what the other partner was.
I think it was Akiri.
But yeah, just like you play the one that gives double strike, and then your opponent on their turn plays the thing that actually gets your partner on their turn plays the thing that actually gets the double strike, and then starts beating down, rather than like you having to play one and then play the other. It's also just like starting with 10 cards in hand, basically, because you get a free tutor off your.
Yeah.
Even if they cost 6 mana, like it's still an extra card.
Well, but keep in mind, Will's Minus also discounted Planeswalkers, so the Rowan that I got for it was so dumb.
What an epic combo. And Rowan, like, it just, and with turns, like, their alts are actually insane, and combo with, moist piece of bread, like.
Yeah, like, with that deck, there were a couple times where I looked at my hand, I was like, alright, I have Kess in play and, like, a demonic tutor in hand. So if you hit me with this, like, I can just go off. Like, that's good enough.
One of my favorite strategies was one that you guys kind of, I saw you guys were the first ones to do it as far as I saw, which was Oath of Druids / Polymorph, where, because the deck,
it's so oppressive.
The thing is in 2v2, it's like very creature focused, where you either need to be, you're either playing a bunch of creatures to kind of beat down your opponents, or you have to contend with your opponents. You need to be able to answer them doing that. So blockers, blah, blah. It's like people are coming with creatures, and then all of a sudden, you've got Oath of Druids and as an option. It's like, oh well, I can't play creatures anymore because I'm going to basically instantly lose. And then the polymorph synergy is also just super dope, because you can be the one to polymorph your partner's stuff.
With some of the
into their combos.
Yeah, so like I think so. You guys played Thrasios, Foul Smasher, and then Tasigur with this.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly annoying because you'd be like, all right, well, we could keep the Tasigur off the table because we can keep a graveyard in check, and it's a bit expensive to get it down with that Dorks. But then the Thrasios player would just play the Thrasios, and then the Tasigur player would use their polymorph on the Thrasios, and it's just like, god damn it.
Yeah, also Oath is a lot better when, if you guys aren't playing creatures, no one who isn't on your team gets to take advantage of it, and also it happens instead of 3 turns for the table to prepare, like, collectively between your 3 opponents, there's 1 turn because your partner gets the trigger.
Yeah. So it's just like, all right, I play Oath, the next opponent has a chance to answer this, and then my partner gets a trigger.
And it's probably like a Tidespout Tyrant, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, and since we haven't talked about, but yeah, there's been a lot better, Oath polymorph targets. I mean, notably Allbreaker Horror printed since Matt and Morgan were employing the strategy. I'll also speak to. It's kind of a more obvious synergy. One of a deck combination that I played a couple times was Edgar and Edric, where one obviously player is kind of, well, so you can build it in a couple different ways. The thing with the way we kind of built it was that Edgar was basically the one kind of just going turbo aggro. And he was just trying to take out one player as fast as possible. And Edric was playing hard control. So Edric was playing like all the good like mana dorks to obviously for ramp, and then a couple of really good like evasive creatures that he could play at instant speed, or did something decent, but like not just all the standard unblockable stuff that you've come to expect from like Edric turns. It was very much just, I'm gonna get out Edric, and the Edric player is gonna, I'm gonna get out Edric, and the Edgar player is gonna draw 10 cards. And the Edric deck is like,
a bunch of them are going to be like 1 CMZ vampires that you can just dump right back
and
out.
a hyper efficient like interaction. Like it was running Uba Mask and that sort of thing to try and just get the most out of your mana and take advantage of the cards. The one thing that was actually kind of
When you say
useful
Ubamask,
about
you mean unmask, right?
Unmask?
Yeah, unmask. Sorry.
Ubamask
Yeah.
seems like
Uber
a
efficient.
very
Yes, yeah,
nombo.
no. I meant unmask. But one thing that was kind of useful about this combination of partners, we'd mentioned that there was no proxies, or there was only 5 proxies allowed. So what would often happen is, it would be one person who has a bit of a lesser collection partnered with someone who has a better collection, or at least that was something that happened semi-frequently. And so if you were doing Edgar Edric, the player with the more extensive collection can supply the duels and staples without there being any overlap because of they don't share any colors. So yeah, it's like you only need one
It's
force
actually
of will
very
between the
important.
two of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll touch again on those commanders later. But anything
We actually
else?
did have, one time I forget who was playing it. Anyway, we played against a deck at one point that was Derevi and Edric as well,
Oh yeah.
which was also just like backbreakingly strong
Yeah.
when they got online, because you basically it's sort of funny because like Edric almost always actually uses the draw worse than its partner in pretty much any pairing with Edric. So you almost always end up with like Edric being like a hard control deck. But Derevi with an Edric in play is just incredibly
That's
dumb.
exactly
when
what
you have
Derevi means,
turns,
just
because you're just like, yeah, like you're playing Edric, except you also have white, and you just untap all of your mana whenever you hit. So it's you're just doing like all this incredibly dumb stuff.
Yeah. Any other standout synergies or decks for you guys? I know Matt and Morgan, you guys played the many more games than myself or Reed.
There were some interesting ones with commanders as partners. We saw a few different things that tried to make Narset plus like Teferi's puzzle box work. Arkham, like we played against Narset Arkham, where like it had some more standard Arkham stuff, but also if you didn't have like sort of the setup you needed for those combos, you could just get a puzzle box and then have your partners slam their Narset. People also did something similar with Tezzeret. So there was some interesting stuff there. I'm trying to remember what else we saw that was
Najila Edric is a common one.
Najila Edric is a common one. Like Najila is just kind of 5-color tempo, and then Edric is just a bunch of
Did someone take Thalia in the command zone? I feel like I saw someone take
there were
potentially.
people played
Lots of the
Grand
99.
Arbiter a bunch.
Lots of Grand
Yeah.
Arbiter, yeah. That's annoying.
Which is funnily enough, the original rules actually had well, first they did allow having the same partner, and then everyone decided that playing against double Grand Arbiter was not fun, and they didn't want to do it anymore. So then they're like, okay, you can't have the same commander as your partner. And then it sounds like what happened was the next time one team showed up with Grand Arbiter and Sakashima, like old Sakashima. So they wound
Turns
up
out even
banning
mono blue
Sakashima
Grand
as a
Arbiter is
partner.
good.
Yeah. Which we the Sakashima ban is kind of like not.
It's not something that we would consider core to the rule set.
It's
Yeah,
not a
so, I mean,
devastating
I in
loss.
fact would not want Sakashima banned because it's like no one. It's not even. Yeah. If you want to play mono blue, to get a copy of your opponent's of your partner's commander, then no, so be it.
It's kind of a spirit of the format
am
ban,
nature.
which I appreciate. Because like like obvious, boring combos aren't really what people were bringing. Or at least that was like the Rule Zero social contract, that unsaid social contract. Like the intention was to try out, cool things.
So next, I think it would be nice to talk about some of the new stuff that we've seen get printed for 2v2. So every time a new set comes out, this is why I like having, if you're only a CDH player, or even more restrictive, if you only play a single deck. Now we can use Gitrog as an example. If you only play Gitrog, you look at Neon Dynasty and you're like, cool, there's one new card for my deck, which is Beseiju. Like that's it. And is that, to me, it takes some of the fun out of new sets, because I like to get excited about a bunch of cards. So if you have multiple decks, well, now you can get excited when there's something printed for Gitrog, but then also something more niche maybe printed for Yuriko, or I mean this was a pretty good set for Yuriko overall anyway. But then you can, beyond that, more formats. If you're playing Pauper, you can get excited about commons, or kind of keep extrapolating with this. Have you guys been keeping your, because I know it kind of used to be that a new set would come out and you'd look and be like, this is going to be good for 2v2. Have you guys been doing that much since we stopped playing and new sets have been coming out?
I definitely haven't
Honestly,
been as tuned into it.
I
There's been a
definitely
couple
was
things I'm
for
like, that's
a
kinda
while,
cool,
but then it just when I hate to say it, but then lockdown never ended, so I feel like just that mindset slowly drifted. But obviously, I mean, like, you can tell, like, we're ready to get back into this format.
Yeah.
Dude,
I
Hinata could be pretty cool.
So not maybe with the most recent set with Neon Dynasty, I haven't looked at too much for like Neon Dynasty, the core set, or the commanders, the commander product for 2v2. But before that, I was kind of keeping my eye on stuff for 2v2 and doing some searches and being like, yeah, I'm gonna set these aside in a separate folder for stuff to kind of track. We can talk about some good ones. And the stuff that I was kind of looking at was tended to be like efficient beaters, because Boseiju is going to be a staple of the format. Like, things that are staples are going to be staples. We have here that Draneth Magistrate was basically printed right at the start of lockdown, and so that was kind of like 2v2 stopped being a thing then. But I mean, we did play our tournament with Draneth, but we didn't get a ton of Draneth experience. We were discussing a bit pre-show whether or not we'd even we'd be considered banning Draneth. I mean, I think the conclusion was that we'd want to get in some games with it first.
Some testing with it.
Yeah. Like, Draneth is extremely potent in 2v2.
Like, removal and edicts though are just so prevalent.
But I was mostly looking at like beaters and stuff, because that's kind of what I was into. So, are you guys familiar with the card Chaos Dragon?
No,
That sounds like a combination of two words that could be found on a Magic card. Sure.
This is from
Sounds like a
Forgotten
Yu-Gi-Oh
Realms
card, though.
Commander. It does.
Yeah, it
sound like
really
a
does,
Yu-Gi-Oh.
right?
Chaos. You just throw an Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End.
Yeah,
and there you go,
exactly.
you
Good old CD.
Yeah. So this is from Forgotten Realms Commander. For 1 double red, it's a 4/4 with flying and haste. Chaos Dragon attacks each combat if able. At the beginning of combat on your turn, each player rolls a d20. If one or more opponents had the highest result, Chaos Dragon can't attack those players or planeswalkers they control this combat. Yeah, so fake downside doesn't matter when you have 2 opponents. Because they obviously printed this so that you can't just have a 3-mana 4/4 flying haste in 1v1, like in Legacy or something. But this, and then in 4-player free-for-all, it's a bit, it can be a bit awkward, but it's like less awkward. But in 2v2, it is just 3-mana 4/4 flying haste with basically no downside.
Well, I will say that there is still a downside in that,
because you can't necessarily focus on the one player.
One of the strengths of combat damage based decks is that you focus down one opponent, and this does potentially get in the way of that.
That being said, it's still only a 1 in 4 to get locked out of attacking the opponent that you want to.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then also I think if you do miss one of the opponent you're trying to focus on, it is probably going to be made up for by the fact that it is a 4/4 flying haste. The damage over time will probably, even factoring in a turn of missing, will probably be, higher or comparable at least to other efficient beaters in the format. So
actually, I'm getting distracted here. But did anybody actually ever end up playing a Tarmogoyf deck?
Oh, I
feel
played Tarmogoyf in a few of my decks.
Oh, I
I've
guess.
never played
Wait.
in a deck.
Wait. No. I remember now.
I think it might have been
put
in Edgar
Tarmogoyf in a
Idrik.
deck, but I couldn't. Wait, did I? Wait, Morgan, do we have Tarmogoyf in Virals?
I don't know. I
that deck was
genuinely don't
weird.
remember.
Anyway, yeah.
I mean, now talking about efficient beaters, Reed. You throw back to our top secret spicy tech in the Edric deck, Hidden Gibbons.
Oh god, yeah. Good old Hidden Gibbons. It's so efficient. It's a 1 mana 4/4.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Hidden Gibbons is a green enchantment for a single green mana. Whenever one of your opponents successfully casts an instant, if Hidden Gibbons is an enchantment, Hidden Gibbons becomes a 4/4 creature that counts as an 8.
It's so efficient.
Wait, it doesn't say end of turn?
Nope.
No, it just permanently becomes a 4/4.
Whoa!
Yeah. The hidden and opalescent cycle are all great.
One
both
I brought
vertical,
up
right?
pre-show is Brina. So this is a card I think that was printed in Strixhaven Commander. Brina the Demagogue for this card is insane in 2v2, by the way. It's unreal. For 1 white and a black, Brina is a legendary creature flying 1/3 that reads, whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, if that opponent has more life than another of your opponents, the attacking player draws a card, and you put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature you control.
It's just so
Not bad.
good.
It's a card draw engine for you and your partner, and then also it becomes an insane beater. Like, it grows by 4 power per turn cycle. Unreal.
It doesn't even have to grow itself. You can just grow like another huge beater that somebody has out, or something that like synergizes.
So
with large power.
it basically has haste for 2, right? Because you play it and then you attack one of your opponents, and then you're immediately triggering it and you can put 2 counters on a creature you control. So you can do it on the creature that's attacking.
So I think we can surmise this is going into Edgar, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh my god. It's literally like
going into Doran Silas too. I mean, it's a 1/3, so I mean it gets even better.
Primary tutor
Doran
target.
Sidar, yeah.
That's awesome.
Except if you pump stuff with it, if you pump stuff above 2 power, it becomes blockable.
Yeah, but you can just pump itself because it's got evasion. Or you can just put it on like Doran, and Doran still connects for 7. Yeah. So speaking of Edgar, and sets that were printed since the pandemic started. Well, we got Return to Innistrad, Crimson Vow, and Midnight Hunt. Hella vampires printed in those sets, and some really, really strong ones too. Yeah, so I definitely need to go back and update my my Edgar deck. What about you guys? Any notable cards for you guys?
Yeah, I've got some boring ones, but Jessica's Will and Jeweled Lotus for the Kenrith's deck. Like, it's
very
surprisingly we didn't play this format when those cards were legal. Like, it's been that long. Wow. Just like cards you can't typically power out because you'd have to put rituals in your deck, but now you can get these like actually really good rituals that have other modes. It's nice.
Ooh, Ragavan. Ragavan was printed since then too.
Yeah.
Also,
nice.
Fierce Guardianship, Deflecting Swat, and Deadly
Oh,
Rollick
yeah.
were all
Yeah,
printed since
yeah.
then.
Yeah. Rollick is
Rollick
actually
is
insane.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of decks that want those.
I was opening one of my DV2 decks, and my Edgar deck has a 110 card maybe board.
Yeah. That sounds like a Linden brew.
Yeah.
I was also actually sort of thinking that Hinata could be actually pretty great in 2v2 as well.
Yes, I said that.
Yeah. You missed
Oh wait,
that,
did you?
yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
totally missed it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely mitigates the downside of making it hard to interact with stuff, and then
Yeah.
instead of having like a few combo pieces that your opponents have to counter, you just have like 15 different like absolutely breaking removal spells that
Wipes and stuff, yeah.
Oh, just this
There's
by force. Whoopsie.
What about
There's also Ishin.
The double
2 heavens is 1.
double combat
Which is the
triggers
Mario
one?
who doubles up combat triggers. There are some pretty nuts combat triggers. I mean, like doubling up on your ally, on your partner's Najila triggers seems like pretty nuts.
I don't
Wait, does
know.
that Orzhov creature trigger on attack or on connect? I forget. The one you mentioned.
It's
earlier.
whenever a creature attacking causes a trigger ability of a permanent. You can
No.
trigger.
The
I'm sorry,
Brina
the
triggers on
bird.
attack.
Breeder.
Oh, sorry, Brina.
so-
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so you get
You
doubles
get
on
double
there.
Brina.
You could also you could also play it with what's it called? You could play Ishin and Godo as a combination of 2 cards. Just play Godo beatdown, and you slam Godo with
Godo-
Ishin and play.
Godo
and
gets
Godo
Embercleave.
attacks and
What? No,
Yeah, exactly.
no. Godo gets grafted exoskeleton. What?
oh yeah, and then you take double or triple combats on your attack.
I think legitimately, I think having to equip exoskeleton, like, is it really?
Doesn't
that
Embercleave
much
attach
better
to an
than Embercleave?
attacking creature?
No, it ETBs and attaches to a creature.
Oh my god, even just Najila.
Yeah, Embercleave.
I mean,
Embercleave.
That's what I'm
Godo
saying.
is
Like
a
Ishin plus
fast
Najila,
clock.
just like
That's
Fast
insane, yeah.
I think
I mean,
the
it should-
exoskeleton has to be better though. Like Godo.
It doesn't give tramp. Does the exoskeleton give trample? I don't think
No.
so, right?
No, but it's a
Embercleave
one shot.
does.
Like if you can get through, they just die. 2 combats times 5 infect is dead opponent.
Man, that is true.
Some good math.
That is true. Yeah. So I was looking. You know, Exodus / Awaken the Blood Avatar.
Yeah.
That could be an interesting brew, where you're getting the double edict, and then it is just hyper aggressive, and is in decent colors.
Yeah, Exodus is just good value in this format. Like just
Mhm.
itself. Like fun piece.
We've gotten a lot of good like aggressive creatures. Like this is the one thing is I think the one thing that I've kind of noticed since I was paying attention to it was that there's been so many new strong aggressive threats at like low CMC. Like Adeline is insane. There's I think it's new, but I was looking at actually no, this is somewhat new. Familiar with Agitator Ant? And this one is as insane as the others, but I mean this was just a new card that I saw that's like at the beginning of your end step, each player may put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature they control, then goad each creature that has counters put on it this way. So I mean like you can grow if you're the beatdown, then you know it's for 3 mana, every turn you're putting 4 power to play between you and your partner. Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that I'm really interested in kind of getting back to and exploring. Also, yeah, new commanders as well. Winota. We never really played with
Winota,
Winota.
Yeah, definitely not a bad one.
yeah. That one is very efficient at closing out the game when it's
At
one
doing
player
what
at
it
30 life.
does. Yeah.
But I think you would. It's like you would even just go. You would scrap the combo completely, right? Like you would actually.
Oh
just
yeah,
go for
100%. You just go
I'm
full
actually like
damage,
not
yeah.
even
the
sure
Giga token. Like,
how good
producers.
I think that would be, because I think like Winota and CDH gets a massive
Already
boost from
dies to removal.
yeah, it already
being
died. It dies to
normal.
removal, and it's just that like people aren't playing removal. But
But I mean,
Yeah.
if the rest of your deck is just stacks and things to kind of disrupt your opponents, and you're just beating down with
There's
the
no
creatures
way
you have
you play.
anyway, it's not bad.
There's no way you play stacks in that Winota variant. It's 100% like the other
Yeah, you
person
don't.
on your team is doing all
No,
the
you're
interacting
playing. You're
for
playing
you, and you're just
Thalia.
playing
You're
turbo
playing
combat.
Rule of Laws. You're playing like
yeah.
the Eidolons. Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, probably light on it. I feel like you would replace some stack pieces with
No,
lightning
I
greaves.
feel like it's just a bunch of like really really fat humans and a bunch of like cheap creatures, and then like you certainly start cutting down on the stack slot.
I also think that rule of laws are like a lot worse in 2v2 because
Yeah.
like you could still quasi double spell or at least like protect something.
Well, I
Yeah,
think it's more
yeah.
about shutting off your opponent's ability to win. A lot of decks, you know, they still if you're kind of making yourself the beatdown, and you're like, Winota is not going to lose to like other creature decks, really, or at least it shouldn't.
So
then
what you're
you
saying,
just, so long as your opponents aren't winning, you kind of have a lot of inevitability, right?
so we just play all of the free creatures in the game, so all of the
Kobolds and all that
all the kobolds, all of that stuff, and then you play Winota Edric, and then Winota connects, draws a bunch of free creatures, dumps them all into play, and then keeps going.
I could see Winota being not so great because you can't necessarily be proactive with mana denial. Like wastelands and strip mines are like such a big problem.
That's the big one
too.
Well, to me, Winota would be very similar to like the Sylvia Korvat deck, where it's like the thing is, our kind of experience with Winota and CDH is very much that, well, you're gonna build heavily around Winota, right? Whereas the Sylvia Korvath deck was very much, my commanders are good beat sticks, and then the rest of my deck is like stacks and beats, to make it hard for my opponents to win while also keeping pressure up. I think Winota is very similar, where it's like if you're just running a bunch of kobolds, then your deck is kind of crap. But if you're running more kind of like just hate bears and kind of stacks, then you can try and resolve your Winota, and then if that doesn't happen, well, you're still keeping pressure up. Like that's how I would look at building Winota. But yeah, I mean, there's no games going on to see what a true Winota deck looks like. Yeah. So unless one of you out there, one of our listeners, goes and builds it.
Hey, I you know what? I'm gonna put it out there right now. If you're a listener listening to this, and God bless you, you're probably one of the 10 that's going to be getting this far. If you want us to potentially run some 2v2 events and get some interest going, just let us know. I'm sure we can spend some time to put together a online 2v2 event.
How hard
if
could it
people
be
are interested
to organize a tournament?
So then,
not even tournaments, just like monthly
a day
play sessions on a weekend or something like that, and just have people hop in on the server and play it.
Our last segment, before we close out the main topic, is what are the best pairs in the format right now? And this is obviously us having not played in a hot minute.
For
so
like
this is
2 years.
Yeah, this is going to be what do we remember the best decks being, kind of what would we theorize the best decks. So last in the tournament we held, and this was, we had some friends participate in 2v2 for the first time, and they're like, oh, what should we build? And the advice they were given was basically play 2 4-color decks, and the Thrasios, Vile Smasher, Timnacrom, good stuff piles with Thoracle win condition. This was successful. I think people had played this kind of strategy was something that wasn't necessarily new, kind of just like good stuff piles with good commanders. Like partners already in 2v2 are basically cheating because you're starting with an extra card in hand. Like we joke about that in CDH, but in 2v2
it really matters.
It really matters when like the body of something can matter, or like Vile Smasher, his text is like actually very real for
her text. Thank you.
Her text. Sorry,
Goblin Lady.
Their text, guys. But...
and
also just having like the bodies coming down really early is often
and the fact that
relevant too.
They don't share commander tags, so like you can play the body early and then it gets removed. And it's like, well, here's my second one, and it's like you just get so much value out of that. So yeah, playing Thras Vile. I mean, Vile's already pretty aggressive at closing the game, and then Timnacrom. Crom is another like very aggressive threat. So like you've got pressure in the command zone, good card advantage in the command zone, partners, and then you're also in 4-color and you get to play one of the better win conditions and just some really strong grindy cards.
Okay, so I have I have just an idea that I want to put out there before we can move too far away from Vile Smasher here. You play Vile Smasher on one side, Hinata on the other side, and then a bunch of donates and steal effects so that you can give the Vile Smasher to the Hinata player, or like the other way around, and you just cast massive X spells and dome somebody for like 20.
Oh my god.
Nice. Yeah, well, See how that works out for you, Reed.
So you have to have a creature stick around, right? And then you also need to.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
needs to be a legal target when you cast your donate, and it needs to be
Uh-huh.
in play on your opponent's turn.
Exactly.
So
Sounds
yeah,
fun.
we kind of have. So I guess one of the other tried and tested kind of best decks in the format is just going to be Kess plus whatever you want to pair.
I mean, that's just the classic, right? I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I played a lot of this with Morgan and Tom, but it just feels like Kess is just such a great addition to any other partner.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like you're playing sort of like almost like a Death Shadow deck where you just have like cheap removal counter spells and hand attack, and then like instead of playing the Death Shadow and going on the beatdown, you then just like play Kess and do it all over again.
Yep. I'll him to Turek you on turn 2, and then like 3 turns later,
Oh
I'll
my
do it
God.
again.
Yeah.
And then like you just leave your partner free to do, whatever it is they want to do, and you can often just by like hand attacking and like having cheap counter spells just shut off your opponent's ability to interact meaningfully pretty early on.
And we touched on this deck earlier, like the Oath of Druid / Polymorph deck. We didn't. I don't. How many times did you guys take that combination?
At least
2
two.
or 3.
Yeah.
I think we took it to 2 and then played it in the online one
Okay.
once.
Because the first time we
yeah.
played Oath, we didn't win the day. I think we came second or something, and then, but it was pretty clear the deck was dominating, and then I think we took it another time to just get the win.
Oh right, because I like messed up and I like did. I remember it came down to like
playing against you guys, and like I feel like we milled one of you out.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
I like didn't put in Memory's Journey or something.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
And then wound up like oathing myself and was like, wait. Or I oathed myself down to
No.
I oathed myself down to like
No.
5 cards and then
Yeah,
Memory's
it wasn't even that you like wanted to mill your deck and like restack with Mem Journey. It was that like the Tidespout Tower was in the last like 5 cards.
Oh yeah, it was just the most unlucky day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that combination or that strategy incredibly strong, and then I added like
Especially with the new Tidespout and
Oh,
like,
yeah.
all-
Yeah, that's
like the
huge.
Kraken together. Yeah.
super efficient wins, good synergies with your partner. You get to play anti-creature, like just all around great strategy. And then I added Winota plus X because I think Winota could be quite strong, but I guess it is very much a question mark.
I think there are
obvious thing to pair it with.
there are lots of decks and pairings that Winota will just absolutely face roll. But
Yeah.
I think there are also decks that will just kind of stonewall her. Like decks with a
Yeah,
lot
like,
of
I
removal
think-
and like cards like Deluge. Like anyone playing anti-creature strategies is gonna give you're gonna have a bad time.
I mean, you don't even
Oh,
have
yeah.
to
Yeah,
be
I
like
was gonna
a
say, like-
primary anti-creature strategy. Like, even if your like tertiary strategy is to just have 15 removal spells in your deck, like Winota's gonna have a hard time.
Well,
I was gonna say, like, I feel like the perfect example of this is just if somebody was just playing the Red and 6 Crooks of pairing, you're just like, turn 2, ping off your dork. Croxa starts discarding your hand, removing your stuff. You just like start wastelanding the
Yeah.
Winota player. They can't do anything.
You can like get 2 Winota triggers. Maybe that's enough, but I don't know. That seems like so hard to do.
I also think that like in the best of 3 matches, the whiff chance starts to like come up and be something that like
Well, that
makes
could be
me
true,
a
yeah.
little uncomfortable over the course of like say like the first 2 Winota triggers in each of like 3 games. It feels like there's a decent chance that one of them you're just gonna find basically nothing or like nothing
No.
immediately relevant.
No, dude, the whiff chance is way down. Like, you get to play all the great combat base creatures that you don't get to play in CDH, which is like probably 100 potential new cards you can look at.
But I think they're also like they're much harder to like just put in your deck because you just aren't gonna have the same kind of mana, right? Like
the way I envision Winota is kind of what Matt was talking, which is it is just Boros like aggressive creatures, and then if you stick Winota, you win. Like you're not doing the Memnite Ornithopter thing, or at least
I mean, but the issue is that you still have to have a composition of the deck that works to make Winota win when you cast her, right? Is the thing.
You don't even have to. I mean, it's like just it's an aggressive way to draw cards and cheat them into, like, it doesn't need to win on the spot necessarily. Like, getting Winota triggers is winning, right?
I think the bar is really.
Sure,
if you just put an Adeline off of Winota, like that feels
but I like what I'm saying. I think what Morgan was getting at too is that like the whiff chance is still very real, and like as soon as you start cutting down on the specific synergy cards, like the whiff chance actually gets worse, right? Or like there's the chance of you having non-humans in play to get those triggers gets worse.
I don't think I necessarily agree with that, because I think to kind of what Matt was saying is like there is just efficient beaters in Boros that you wouldn't play in 4-player free for all that you would play because they beat one player down pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Mm.
They have more than 3 toughness. They come down and make tokens. Like, they kind of solve a lot of problems at once.
Cool. So I think that wraps it up for our main topic for the show. So if any listeners want to reach out with questions about 2v2, or this has sparked interest, when you want to try it out with your friends or something, and you have any questions, reach out to us. We're more than happy to answer them and report back. If you try 2v2, we'd love to hear how the experience went. If you got brews or ideas, just want to chat 2v2 at all, definitely pop on into the Discord and say something, because definitely down to talk about this. And also, if anyone wants to try it out for their playgroup and they don't want to have to brew from scratch completely, I mean, I think one thing is, like, once you're familiar with the format, brewing is kind of one of the more enjoyable aspects. It's a really fun format to brew in, but that can be a bit of a barrier to entry when maybe one pairing has kind of figured out how to build and optimize for this format more than another, and then you guys go to play and then one team just gets completely rolled, and then that might not be fun. So if you guys want to try it out with your local play group, you can reach out to us and we can provide you guys with some kind of like pre-built decks. I mean, they're maybe not, I don't think any of us have like a up to date with like all the current cards and kind of optimized, but we can at least provide you with
like base stuff,
the base stuff that what was like a refined deck 2 years ago, or even like with some of the new cards that we just know are probably going to go in there with like just at a first glance thing. So yeah, that's that, which means it is time for everyone's favorite segment, Gut Check.
Gut Check.
Gut Check.
Woo!
We did it.
This week's Gut Check brought to you by Matt.
Mr. Null himself.
What do you got for us?
All right. So if you could heist or insert an ethical means of obtaining something, one piece of magic history, what would it be?
Ooh.
What's the most money?
No, okay. Besides value,
you can't sell it.
They're all priceless. Okay, they're all priceless.
Yes, you can't sell it.
And I intentionally put no thought in this, so I have to think about it. And like this could just.
Oh, I think I got one.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I have one as well.
Yeah, I've got one. I'm not. I can. Matt, are you good?
I'm still working on it.
Okay. Then I'll kind of monologue a bit. So, I'm not particularly interested or like care too much about owning a piece of magic history. Like, I wouldn't go out of my way to kind of acquire something like that. But if I could just like pick one and have it, and I think like, original Black Lotus art. Like
The original,
that's
yeah. That'd
the
be
most
amazing.
iconic Magic card. The original art of that, like that would just be that'd be pretty freaking cool. Like that, I don't think there's a piece like if you have that, I don't think there's any bigger. Like I mean, the only bigger flex is like a bigger collection of stuff. Like that is the, I think maybe the most single impressive piece of Magic history you could have.
Yeah, truly iconic. Truly iconic.
Morgan, Reed,
Uh,
Matt, are you still thinking or?
I got one, but
Okay.
I guess I should say it before someone steals it.
Yeah, go for it.
That's the meta, man.
No, I'll wait.
I think my answer would probably have to be one of the alpha playtest cards. So there was before Magic actually went into print, before Alpha went into print, there were like Richard Garfield conducted basically like this whole set of playtests with a bunch of different people and a bunch of different like updates and revisions between different like pre-versions of Magic before it actually got finalized and sent out to print. And the Alpha playtest cards, it's sort of confusingly named, but there are Alpha, Beta, and Gamma playtest cards, and the original Alpha playtest cards were basically like the first Magic cards ever conceived, and were basically Richard Garfield handwriting cards on pieces of yellow cardstock to playtest with a couple of people. So I think owning one of those would just be like absolutely the holy grail for me.
For sure.
Yeah.
Morgan.
I have, I guess I had one that was like kind of went in a different direction. So that one was the specific copy of Cruel Ultimatum that Gabriel Nassif called and then ripped off the top.
Oh, dude.
Oh yeah.
That's
but,
awesome.
But if it's like something a little bit more like
Gregory
not
Hatch's
a
Scott
not
Hussar.
like a specific person's copy of a card. One of the pristine talismans with the Mirrodin Pure set symbol.
I'm not familiar.
I
What's
don't
the
know.
deal?
So in Scars of Mirrodin block, at the start they were like, basically they told the player base that they hadn't decided if the third set was going to be New Phyrexia, where the Phyrexians won, or Mirrodin Pure, where the Mirrans had won and driven the Phyrexians off. And so they, like, at one of the game days, they previewed the card Pristine Talisman with the Mirrodin Pure set symbol on it, but the set, like, was always going to be New Phyrexia, so it's like a set that never existed.
Wow, you're such a
So
nerd.
did they actually print physical cards with that, or was that?
I don't actually know if there are I don't know if there were physical copies, but they like previewed it as a card.
Okay. Matt.
Dude, well, I literally have Morgan's joke take, which is Gabriel Nassif's Ignite Memories. Because I really appreciate it.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I guess. Hold
Wait,
on.
it was
so,
Patrick Chapin's Ignite Memories though.
Or Patrick Chapin's Ignite Memories. Yeah.
The unluckiest.
No, it's... Wait, what?
Wait, what?
Oh, am I derping?
Gabriel Nassif
Oh.
got targeted with Ignite Memories and was like dead. Whatever I remember doing the math. It was like he was dead 232 out of like 243 times or something, and didn't die.
Yeah, oh my god. Any of those like iconic televised,
Yeah.
like early televised moments are just so cool.
Okay, so that's pretty much it for gut check, and we don't have a listener question prepared for this week because we kind of figured that we might go a bit long. So, but we can't end the episode yet. I just need to direct everyone's, or not listeners, but all the podcast hosts attention to the bottom right-hand corner of their PC screen.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this live, look at
It is 10:16 p.m., which means we are 6 minutes away from ending the podcast on 22/22 in 24-hour time. So we have to stall for,
We have to
for
come
5
up
minutes.
with ideas.
But what do you mean?
Well,
That
I mean, okay,
happens
so
every day.
I would certainly say though, like if I had to choose a specific card along the lines of Morgan's and Matt's picks there, it would probably have to be the Craig Jones Lightning Helix.
What if you could just have like one player's deck? Like you take their entire 75 or whatever. Like you get to take it from any iconic Magic player or whatever in history.
Oh,
what deck?
100%. It would be the deck.
What's the deck?
You don't? Oh my god.
No.
Wait, Matt, Morgan, please tell
Yeah,
me that you know
I know
what
what
the deck is.
is.
Yeah, okay, cool. Good. It is like the OG original control deck. It is a control deck whose only win conditions were two Sarah Angels. It's Brian Weissman's The Deck.
Wasn't there a format where like people's win condition in control was just mill because they ran like Elixir of Immortalities?
Oh, that's
Yeah, that
actually
was
that's
way
my
too-
standard.
that was the later
No,
win.
I know. I
con.
imagine it's way, but like
Yeah.
that is like peak fucking no win.
But yeah,
condition.
so Brian Weissman's here. I'll read off the deck, and you'll understand just how formative it is, because this was
You
like
have
the first
3
time that
minutes,
anybody
and
had really done
if
this.
it's going too long, I'm going to cut you off
Great,
and then start
perfect.
wrapping up
It's-
the show.
Sarah Angel, Time Walk, Time Twister, Brain Geyser, Recall, Demonic Tutor, Mind Twist, Regrowth, 4 Mana Drain, 2 Counterspell, 1 Ancestral Recall, 4 Disenchant, 4 Swords to Plowshares, 2 main deck Rebs, 2 Disrupting Scepter, a Jam Day Tome, 1 Ivory Tower, full set of Mox and Black Lotus Soul Ring, 2 Moat in the main, 2 Strip Mine, Library of Alexandria, 3 City of Brass, a Plateau and Underground Sea, 2 Volcanic Island, 4 Tundra, 3 Plains, 4 Island. It is the archetypical control deck. It is like by
You
far
said
one of the
4
greatest decks
regrowth,
of
right?
all time. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I
Or
mean,
no, sorry.
No,
No,
one
all
regrowth.
those were one-ofs. One
Oh,
regrowth,
one of each
4 mana
sorcery,
drain.
yeah.
well, one regrowth. So then there's 1 regrowth, 1 recall as ways to recur your threats. I mean, 4 threats probably good enough, man. That's dope. For me, man, I don't know.
Well, you also play Time Twister, but yeah, continue.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. For me, dude, I simp for him. I've been sipping for him for the past however many episodes. It'd be Gregory Hatch's Mono Blue Martyr deck. Dude, that video is iconic to me.
The one that he brought to the
I think
That's
this
the one.
might-
That's the first video that I saw. Dude, I'll take every chance I can to bring it up. Like that was the first Magic video that I watched, and I was like, "Whoa, this is awesome." And so yeah, I mean, that's it for me.
I think this might we've brought up that deck like probably 3 episodes in a row now. I swear.
Yeah, I know.
man.
I'll do it.
Maybe I'm dreaming, but
No. I think last time we brought up the
Artificer's Intuition.
the surfing, the Artificer Intuition deck. Yeah, the one where you have to surf with the the Salvage Titans, and sometimes it's just a crawl worm, and that's good enough in Legacy. Yes. Okay, we've got a minute left before I'm gonna start closing out the show, so we ended exactly on time. Someone say something.
something. Oh my god.
Now, see, this is when people really get to hear what the pre-show is like.
Yeah, this is.
Does anyone have
A lot
any
less
idea
fighting.
we can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, now you guys know how committed we are to this to this meme. Why are you even
now,
listening at this
now
point?
you know exactly how committed Lyndon is. To
I
this
am committed to this meme. Yeah, I mean, I called it earlier in the show. I'm like, we're gonna end this show at exactly 10:22, and at that point, it was very much a meme because I was like, there's no way. And then as we were approaching, I was like, oh man, we're there. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at IntoNorthPod, via our email, intonorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. An extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work towards improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we are at patreon.com/InTwoPodcast. Another way you can support us is via our TCG Player affiliate link. So anytime you want to purchase something from TCG Player, you use our affiliate link, which is in the podcast/YouTube description. A portion of your purchase goes towards supporting the podcast.
Quick.
Thank you as always to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music. We need Slover for equally lovely podcast logo, and to our video editor, Manta Ray Hack. The next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then.